Brené Brown is a researcher at the University of Houston who studies blame, shame, and vulnerability. You may have seen her TED Talks or read her books. She's kind of a local celebrity. And she talks about what it feels like to be what she calls a blamer. When something goes wrong, the first thing we think is, who's to blame? She tells the story of dropping her coffee cup one morning and it shattering on the floor of her kitchen and spilling everywhere. And her first thought within a millisecond was, damn you, Steve. Steve is her husband. Apparently the night before, he had been a half hour late coming home, and she had waited up for him. And so in her mind, she had gotten less sleep and thus was quick to blame him for both the tiredness that had necessitated the second cup of coffee and that it had made it slip from her fingers. She asks how many of us would rather blame ourselves than have nobody to blame. And she says that we choose this because it gives us some semblance of control in a world that too often seems random, chaotic, and cruel. We see this pattern in this week's Torah portion, Vayetze. After Rachel gives birth to her first son, Joseph, she says something heartbreaking. Rachel has been barren for 14 years. She was desperate to have a son, at one point saying to her husband Jacob, if I don't have children, I will die. Now God has answered her prayers, and as she holds her baby in her arms, she says, Asaf Elohim et cherpati. God has taken away my shame. And so she names him Yosef after the word Asaf, meaning gathered or taken away. But what is this shame she speaks of? Both Sarah and Rebecca have experienced infertility, and it was painful, but neither of them thought it was shameful. Shame is a feeling rooted in our own decisions and actions, so why does Rachel feel that her barrenness is her fault? There is something deeply human about Rachel's response. Too often, couples who experience infertility feel a sense of shame or blame themselves. And too often they keep their stories of difficulty and pain hidden from community because our society only lifts up happy stories of pregnancy and celebratory stories of birth. We should all work to try and eliminate that shame and invite everyone's stories to come with the beautiful and the challenging, the hopeful and the heartbreaking. Genesis reminds us over and over again that infertility is a normal part of the human experience. I'm sure there are those in this room who know that all too well. Rashi offers an unexpected explanation for Rachel's shame. Citing a midrash, Rashi writes, so long as a woman has no child, she has no one to blame for her faults. When, however, she has a child, she puts it on him. Who broke this vessel? My son. Who ate those figs? My son. Rashi paints a strange picture here. Before you have children, if the mug is broken, it must be your fault, or maybe your husband's. But children are perfect scapegoats. The house is a disaster, but it's my child's mess. The refrigerator is empty, but they are eating us out of house and home. It's an amusing thought, but on its surface, a little offensive. Is Rachel really only happy to have a son so that now she has a baby to blame things on? That can't be right. Earlier in the Parsha, when she said to Jacob, if I do not have children, I will die, she does not mean because I'm really tired of our messy tent being our fault. The earlier verse reads in full, when Rachel saw that she had borne Jacob no children, she became jealous of her sister, and Rachel said to Jacob, if I do not have children, I shall die. What is this jealousy that Rachel feels towards Leah? Rashi again writes that Rachel thought to herself, it must be that Leah is more righteous than me, that God has decided to grant her children. She has decided that her barrenness is because of some moral failing when this could not be further from the truth. This is the blame game that Brené Brown talks about. There is so much beyond Rachel's control, and so she searches for someone to blame and lands upon herself. This is the shame she speaks of when she holds baby Yosef in her arms. Because it is in that moment when she realized how wrong she had been. Chani Shulman writes, when she looked at the newborn in her arms, she understood that this was the child she was meant to have. She wasn't destined for a Ruvain or Shimon or a Yehuda, but rather a Yosef. And Yosef was destined to come into this world at that time. Now Rachel understands that there was no shame in her barrenness, no moral failure on her part that led to her inability to conceive. Now what she experiences is not shame, but gratitude. This is one way to understand the midrash about blaming the broken dish or the half-eaten fig on your child. Rachel has come to see that what once seemed like challenges are actually blessings. Her body hurts, she is exhausted, the tent is a mess, and this is only because her long prayed-for child has arrived. Instead of cursing the broken dish, the missing fig, she thanks God for them. And why name her child Yosef? Why choose an enduring remembrance of the shame she once felt? Maybe as a reminder to constantly turn from blame and shame to gratitude. Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson writes, Rachel knew about the human proclivity to focus on the negative instead of the positive, and that even after you've experienced an extraordinary gift, after a while you take it for granted and begin fetching about its imperfections. To counterbalance this human recipe for misery, Rachel named him Yosef as a constant reminder to count her blessings. To understand the shift, we might turn to Viktor Frankel, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist who invented a form of counseling called logotherapy. One of the principles of logotherapy is a concept of paradoxical intention. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he tells this story. He was approached by a patient who suffered from crippling anxiety as he was a schwitzy guy, a condition I can relate to. Every time this gentleman was in a social situation, he would start to perspire. And then he would start to get anxious about how much he was perspiring. And then he would perspire more, and thus the situation would spiral. Dr. Frankel told the man that the next time that he was in a social situation and he started to sweat, he should brag to the other people in the conversation about how much he was sweating. He should show off to them. The young man was skeptical, but he resolved to try it. And about a week later, he was back in Dr. Frankel's office, thanking the good doctor for curing him. He said that the first time he was in a social situation and he noticed himself start to sweat, he thought to himself, oh, thank God. Before, I had only sweated about a quart, but now I have 10 quarts to show off. This made the man chuckle to himself a little bit, and this relaxed him, which calmed his nerves and the perspiration and relieved the anxiety in the situation. Frankel says that after years of suffering from this phobia, he was cured in just 1 week after a single session. While I doubt logotherapy was always this efficient, the story hints at something profoundly true. Often, when things are difficult, gratitude can be our most powerful paradoxical intention. What would it mean to look at our challenges and find blessings within them? It's important to note that this is not always possible. Some things are just tragic and sad. There is no moral failing when we cannot find a silver lining, cannot recognize a blessing in disguise, cannot fathom gratitude at the moment of hardship. There is no shame in suffering. We needn't blame ourselves when we cannot muster gratitude during hardship. And I'm also not advocating for a theology that says that God gives us suffering for some higher purpose. God does not force hardship upon us to teach us a lesson or chastise us. Suffering is a part of the human experience, not divine punishment. Gratitude does not erase our hardships, but it can help us to remember that our hardships are not the totality of our reality. Even within hard and difficult moments, there are things to be grateful for, lessons to learn, and blessings to discover. Is it any wonder that the man who created logotherapy and paradoxical intention survived the horrors of Auschwitz? He was not arguing that the suffering he experienced was noble, that he should thank God for the cruelty inflicted upon him, but he did believe that we can search for meaning within our suffering and that there might be moments of human decency or connection to be grateful for, even within times of astounding darkness. Maybe this is the meaning of the midrash's broken dish and devoured fig. In times of brokenness, in times of shattering, might we seek not to find someone to blame, but rather a blessing to praise. And figs in Judaism are symbols of abundance and peace. Everyone shall sit under his own vine and his own fig tree, and none shall make him afraid. And so perhaps the eaten fig symbolizes a feeling of scarcity. Brené Brown says we live in a culture of scarcity where we are constantly told that we are never enough, never good enough, never safe enough, never rich enough, never perfect enough. And it is this scarcity mindset that breeds blame and shame. But the paradoxical intention is that even when we feel as though we lack, we are also blessed. Blessed with family or friends, blessed with homes or a job, blessed with community and belonging. We may not have all of what we want. There may be a longed-for child, a desired promotion, a broken relationship. But if we can find something to be grateful for, we can remember that this is not all there is. This is what moves us from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance. It does not negate our longing or pain, but it refocuses us such that we might endure them. Some of you know that Thanksgiving weekend is yahrzeit for my mother, Jill Friedman Fixler. And those of you who join me for this service every year have heard me talk about her before. It's fitting that she died on Thanksgiving because it was her life's work to teach us the lessons of gratitude and abundance. She said that she would count her blessings at night instead of sheep. She insisted we go around the dinner table every night and say what we were grateful for as a way to mitigate the complaining over our litany of woes. And when she was sick with cancer, it was this gratitude that carried her through. It did not cure her or save her. It just made her more wholehearted, more brave, more resilient. And when the time came to say goodbye, we did not rail at the injustice of losing her too young, because she had taught us to say thank you for the time we had, for the community that offered us support. Thank you for the blessings of love that remained. This is the lesson of our foremothers that echoes across the generations. As we read Rachel's story on this Thanksgiving weekend, we ask for God to gather our shame and take it away. We ask for God to relieve us of our tendency to blame ourselves and others for the whims of fate and happenstance. And we ask for God to help us find the gratitude especially in difficult times. May this paradoxical intention remind us that pain is not the totality of our reality. And may this intention help us to move from scarcity to abundance, from hardship to hope, and heartbreak to healing. Shabbat Shalom.